Hi, my name is Sabrina Smoot, and this is a video going over my practicum report for the spring 2018 Special Ed 517 course at UIC. And this is the final steps in our practicum report, is going over the FBA BIP and interventions that we completed with the student. And so I conducted this practicum report with one of my students, whose pseudonym will remain Juan. And Juan had a problem behavior of talking out of turn, raising his hand, but also just blurting out at the same time. So even when he did learn to raise his hand, it was never silently. And so I chose this behavior not only because was it disrupting to his peers' learning, but also to his, and sometimes the questions weren't relevant. They'd already been addressed, and so it was really to take Juan and put him on focus. So in order to do this project, in order to develop the FBA and BIP, I started with this functional assessment. I interviewed another one of his teachers who also had the same concerns about the problem behavior, and I interviewed him on his takes on what's happening when the behavior occurs, where and when, and what we found out was Juan just really likes to socialize. He likes to talk, whether it's to peers or to adults, and so our goal was that he could spend the 50-minute class period raising his hand instead of just talking out of turn. And so when I conducted the interview with his teacher, some things that I found out were very similar to what I saw in my own classroom. And so I know the behavior is about to start when I give directions verbally, or when another student is trying to bring up a topic, or whether we're just starting the day. And I tried to just ignore this behavior and remind him to raise his hand, and sometimes his peers would even give that natural reaction of like looking at him like, hey, stop talking over me, or you're distracting me. And so what we decided to do was give him something where he would be able to appropriately socialize and get that consequence that he was looking for. And so because he was trying to gain attention with either peers or staff, I tried a few different interventions of like giving him that time before class to check in with him, give him a checklist so there were no questions to talk out of turn for, and kind of like prompting him like with a 1 minute, and I would be with him. So those were some of the things that helped the behavior, because he was just trying to communicate and it wasn't effective, and it was also giving him attention, focusing off of the class. So my objective was in the 50-minute science class, Juan will raise his hand without talking out of turn with 80% accuracy for 5 consecutive days. And so again, he wanted attention, whether it was from his peers or adults. And so to address these interventions, I included more time for him to talk with his peers in class activities, such as you can see with like the Think, Pair, Share. Alright, and so the intervention was used in every science class. There were a few days where Juan was not in school. I think out of the intervention days, there was about 2 days he was not there, but he did pretty good. We recorded data on a sheet, and so you'll see this is the example of the recording chart that we used. And so we took data on not only him talking out of turn, but raising his hand silently. And so we wanted to kind of see if the target behavior and problem behavior were still occurring at the same time. So this was just an example of the chart that we used that I submitted. And so as you can see, we were trying to determine the frequency by tallying within a time period how many times he had done it. And so it was just easier for my teacher assistant and I to take this sheet, compare sheets if we weren't able to, within a 10-minute time period, take data because one of us was working with another student, it was easier for us to like split it up by 10-minute periods and just tally the frequency of that. So finally, this you will see is my graph of the data with the baseline and the intervention. So Juan was given positive praise every time he raised his hand. I or my teacher assistant would give Juan positive praise, and he really responded well to that, especially because he just wanted the attention of us or his peers. And so that positive praise seemed to work. As you can see in the baseline, it was near non-existent, but as the interventions kept going and praise was given, I feel like there was a steady increase for most of the time. I would say the decrease that happened at the end of the sessions probably led to Juan being absent. As I mentioned earlier, there were a few days where he was absent. But I think overall it's working, especially now after this project has concluded. I'm still working with him on this, and so I feel like there is definitely a growth and a gain, and as we talked about, sometimes with data it's not always going to increase. There's going to be sometimes where the student drops that target behavior, and so this worked, and I really liked doing this. And it's something that we're still working on, but overall I think this was a great FBA BIP practice really to use with this student. And so I hope you enjoyed this, and if there's any further questions, please email me.